By 1943, the air war over the Mediterranean had become a relentless contest for dominance. Allied bombers struck from North Africa and Sicily, while Axis fighters scrambled from dwindling bases in Sardinia and the Italian mainland. Every aircraft lost or captured mattered, not just in battle, but in the laboratories and workshops where engineers fought their own parallel war, the war of ideas and machines. Amid this turmoil, a single American fighter would soon become the center of one of Italy's most remarkable technical encounters. The Lockheed P-38 Lightning was an aircraft like no other. Its distinctive twin booms and central nacelle gave it a silhouette that Axis pilots came to recognize and fear. Fast, heavily armed and long-ranged, it was both a fighter and a reconnaissance platform, capable of escorting bombers deep into enemy territory. German pilots had nicknamed it Der Gabelschwanz, Teufel, the fork-tailed devil. To Italian engineers, when they finally saw it up close, it seemed less like a devil and more like a vision of the future. On June 12, 1943, a U.S. Army Air Force's P-38 was returning from a reconnaissance sortie over Sardinia when it encountered flak and engine trouble. The pilot, realizing he could not make it back to base, sought a flat area for an emergency landing. His aircraft touched down near Capoterra, sliding to a halt with surprisingly little damage. Local Italian troops arrived quickly. The pilot was captured unharmed, and the Lightning, intact, became a prize unlike any other. Word of the capture reached Rome within hours. For the Italian Air Force's Research Division, this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The order was immediate: recover and study the aircraft. The P-38 was carefully disassembled, crated, and ferried to the Guidonia Monticello Experimental Center near Rome, the heart of Italian aeronautical science. There, teams of engineers, mechanics, and test pilots awaited what they called Il Miracolo Americano, the American miracle. Guidonia was more than an airfield. It was Italy's counterpart to Farnborough or Wright Field. Within its hangars stood wind tunnels, metallurgical workshops, and laboratories devoted to flight testing. By 1943, Italy's engineers were skilled, but constrained by limited industry and outdated tooling. When the Lightning arrived, it was as though an object from another century had fallen into their hands. A fully modern machine, both alien and familiar. At the center of their study were the Allison V-17 or 10 engines, one for each boom. Each produced roughly 1,600 horsepower, with performance enhanced by a turbo supercharger, a technology rarely perfected outside the United States. For the Italians, this engine was revelation. The precision of the castings, the integration of cooling systems, and the sophistication of the turbo assembly were beyond anything their factories could replicate at scale. Engineers began the slow process of disassembly, carefully photographing, labeling, and documenting every component. Cylinder heads, valves, fuel injectors, even the wiring harnesses, all were measured and catalogued. The goal was not to copy, but to understand the philosophy behind the design. Each part reflected an industrial ecosystem that Italy lacked: specialized alloys, consistent tolerances, and advanced quality control. For all their brilliance, Italian designers like Giuseppe Gabriele and Roberto Longhi struggled against an impossible reality: wartime shortages, limited foundries, and bombed factories. The Lightning's engine was a product of an economy that could produce perfection by the thousands. Italy's could only produce excellence in handfuls. The captured P-38 laid bare that uncomfortable truth. Some at Guidonia dreamed of building an Italian equivalent. Reports circulated proposing a hybrid design using Allison-style superchargers mated to Italian engines like the Fiat RA, Anselm-50, RC-58 Typhoon, a license-built Daimler-Benz DB605, But materials, time, and politics intervened. The dream remained only that, a dream of what Italy might have achieved had industry and technology aligned before the war. Accounts differ, but some sources suggest that one of the engines, and possibly the entire aircraft, was made operational again. Captain Angelo Tondi, a test pilot of exceptional skill, was said to have flown the Lightning under Italian colours. In one famous but unverified account, he intercepted a B-24 bomber, shooting it down before returning safely. True or not, this legend became part of the mythology of the captured Lightning, a story of Italian pride amidst decline. By mid-1943, German observers arrived at Guidonia. They, too, were eager to inspect the Lightning, comparing it to their own aircraft like the Messerschmitt Bf 110 and the Me 410 Hornisse. German engineers respected its design, but considered it heavy and over-engineered. Still, they took extensive notes, particularly on the turbo supercharging system, which was far more advanced than anything Germany mass-produced. On September 8, 1943, Italy signed the armistice with the Allies. The nation collapsed into confusion as German forces occupied the north. Guidonia's engineers scrambled to protect their research. Some destroyed documents, others smuggled parts to safe houses. The captured P-38 vanished. Some said seized by the Germans, others that it was destroyed by Allied bombing during the chaos. No trace of the aircraft has ever been found. Its serial number, believed to be 43-78, appears only in fragmentary wartime reports. Whether dismantled, shipped to Germany, or scrapped for metal, the Lightning that once astonished Italian engineers faded into rumor, a ghost of technology lost to history. Allied intelligence quickly learned that one of their Lightnings had been captured intact. Fearing a breach of advanced engine, secrets, they issued new protocols for all aircrews: destroy equipment before capture and carry demolition charges to prevent enemy study. It was a reminder that in modern war, information was as valuable as firepower. When the war ended, Italy's laboratories were in ruins. But the engineers who had examined the Lightning didn't vanish. Many were quietly recruited into post-war research programs, contributing to Italy's rebirth in aviation. Their understanding of supercharging, metallurgy, and modular engine design, gleaned in part from the P-38 study, proved invaluable in the rebuilding years. In 1946, Allied occupation authorities discovered fragments of technical notes at Guidonia, diagrams of the Allison engine, reports comparing it to the Daimler-Benz DB605, and handwritten observations about American cooling systems. These findings were preserved and later archived in Rome. Though incomplete, they provided rare insight into the technical mindset of wartime Italy. By the 1950s, Italy's aviation industry re-emerged under NATO supervision. Companies like Fiat Aviazione and Air Marchi applied lessons learned not from imitation, but from analysis. They understood that success required systemic precision, not just inspired design. In that way, the P-38's legacy quietly flowed into the next generation of Italian aircraft, from the Fiat G91 jet to the MB326 trainer. The men of Guidonia, scientists, draftsmen, and mechanics, seldom spoke of their wartime studies. Many carried a mixture of pride and melancholy, knowing they had glimpsed greatness but lacked the means to reproduce it. Some emigrated, others taught at technical institutes, shaping a new generation that would design Italy's post-war aircraft. In the classrooms of Turin and Rome, their memories became lessons in humility and progress. Over decades, the story was embellished. Tales of flight tests, daring intercepts, and secret cooperation with German scientists. Historians have since tried to separate fact from fiction. What remains certain is this: the P-38's capture happened, its study was real, and the awe it inspired changed how Italian engineers thought about aviation forever. By the 1970s, fragments of the Guidonia reports resurfaced in archives. Researchers rediscovered sketches of the P-38's turbochargers and detailed Italian-language notes on fuel injection and high-altitude performance. For historians, it confirmed that Italy's wartime engineers had learned deeply, even amid ruin. Modern Italy's aerospace achievements, from the Aeritalia G222 transport to collaboration on the Eurofighter Typhoon, trace faint lines back to that moment in 1943, when Italian minds first opened an American engine and looked into the future. Their journey mirrored the nation's, from destruction to renewal, from isolation to partnership. The captured Lightning was never rebuilt, never displayed, never remembered by the public, but its brief captivity shaped the quiet evolution of Italy's engineering philosophy. It taught that even in defeat, knowledge could be captured, and that every discovery, no matter how fleeting, could become the seed of progress. At the Vigna di Valle Air Force Museum near Rome, a model of the P-38 in Italian markings stands among other wartime relics. Visitors pause, wondering if it ever really flew under Italy's flag. The curators know. History sometimes hides its most remarkable truths, not in victories but in curiosities, in the machines that briefly bridged enemies through fascination and respect. The Lightning that once fell from the Sardinian sky became more than a war trophy. It became a teacher, one that revealed how far Italy had to go and how far it could rise. From that broken aircraft emerged a quiet revolution in Italian thought, that true power lies not in conquest, but in comprehension. The captured Lightning's engines may be silent, but their echo still hums in the laboratories, factories, and classrooms of a nation that learned, through defeat, the meaning of progress. In the end, the captured Lightning was not a weapon, but a mirror. It reflected everything Italy aspired to become: modern, precise, unstoppable, and everything it was not yet ready to be. What began as an act of war became an act of learning. Italian engineers, surrounded by ruin, looked into the heart of an enemy machine and saw the blueprint of tomorrow. They did not copy it. They studied it. They absorbed its lessons about discipline, production, and design. The P-38 that once fell into their hands vanished in the firestorms of history, but its memory endured, not in steel or wreckage, but in knowledge. Knowledge that helped rebuild factories, train minds, and guide a nation from defeat into innovation. Decades later, when Italian aircraft once again soared across European skies, few remembered that it all began with a single Lightning forced down on a Sardinian field. War had given them destruction, and, in a strange twist, the spark of rebirth. The echo of that captured engine still hums through the corridors of Italy's aerospace legacy, a faint but unbroken reminder that even in the wreckage of war, discovery survives.